Everybody, welcome to the Early Alert. Brian Good here. Several things to talk about. Of course, three headlines really to cover would be the front moving in for potential for severe weather for tonight, the cool air arriving, taste of autumn air coming in, and of course, Irma. Let's start with the thunderstorm threat. First off, today looking pretty good overall. Got some cloud cover kind of streaming overhead at times here today, but overall, a decent amount of sunshine, looking good. Really over a good chunk of the south. It's up here. This is where the front is going to be moving in. In fact, already starting to see some cells beginning to pop along the front there, just south of Chicago, right into portions of northern areas of Indiana. And that is where we're going to see the timing work out to where as the front itself, the best wind shear moves in to 3-4 this afternoon, max heating of the day. Best setup to see the strongest of thunderstorms out of that front, so that's where there's still the enhanced risk in the northern part of the Indy metro all the way into portions of northwest Ohio. And then the severe threat fades a little more closer to our area because of timing issues. By the time it reaches us, we don't have as much energy or fuel really to work with. The wind energy is still prevalent, so I think it's still something to watch out for. But also, even without that, there is one feature that I'm starting to see show up that I do think is worth at least monitoring. Let me show you a couple of the high-res models. This one's not really going to show what I'm talking about because I can't see that far out. But going out into time, it really, her model's doing okay. It tries to pick out some rain already. It should be fun, and we don't have that, of course. But you'll see the line really get going as we head into this evening across the Indianapolis area in Ohio. Kind of some of those cells actually supercellular structures, but we also know how the HRRR has a tendency to overdo its intensity factor on these models. And then you see as it works this evening, it is kind of a broken line that works its way into southern areas of Indiana. What I'm waiting to see happen, because I do think the broken line idea is right, which is the reason why we can't go with like a 100% chance of rain, because I think there will be some gaps where somebody gets missed out of this. I'm debating on whether or not to raise it to 60% or not. I got it at 40 now, and the reason why is that I'm seeing signs that a couple of cells may organize enough that they can become their own wind machine, if you will, and kind of dominate parts of the line. If that happens, then we may see the line really become kind of broken up. But if you're in the path of either one of those areas that really become more dominant, then you are going to run into a damaging wind threat. I think the RPM model actually shows that potential better. Here it is, showing as we get throughout the day, relatively quiet. Actually, it's not even picking up activity in Illinois now, but it will as the day wears on. It shows thunderstorms blossoming across Indiana. Now you're starting to see, if you look carefully, what we call the cold pulling out. The instability is fairly high, as you'll see, but the wind shear, the strongest of wind shear with the front, continues to lag just behind it. And it will be moving into portions of Ohio. However, these individual cells, the instability looks pretty high today, to where if they can become their own worst enemy and cold pull out and become Boeing segments, they'll race out well ahead of the front and become these arching areas of Boeing segments that may work their way right into Louisville or even Western Kentucky, depending on which one becomes more dominant, and then cold pull out and fade out for the overnight period. That potential I see being a threat, which means even though we may not have the best wind shear in our area for later today and to the overnight, we have such high instability that we may have to deal with more of a Boeing segment to really speed up the timeline. For some of you, if you get one of these Boeing segments that aim right at you, you'll have to add a few hours to timing the thunderstorms today, while the rest of us may miss out completely. And then it's just a leftover shower or two tomorrow. Here's the reason why. Here's the instability. This is the downdraft kit more than anything. But really, I mean, these are very high values across Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, and even northern Kentucky. So potential for wind damage is there. But again, the wind shear, and this is only going out to about this early afternoon. But you see the higher wind shear, just again, 40 knots is what we're kind of looking for here. It does lag behind. But if these Boeing segments can cold pull out because instability is so high, they may become their own wind machine themselves, and that can produce some warning. So there is a chance we could see the slight risk get altered a bit, depending if that happens, to account for a damaging wind threat that could push out well ahead of the front itself overnight tonight. So stay tuned for updates throughout the day and this afternoon for any changes on that timing that may take place as a result of that, because that is possible. Okay? So now we got cooler weather out the route. I should mention we have a front, again, more of a trough, secondary front Wednesday. Could be mainly cloudy, cool, 40s at night for some areas. And then beautiful weather until we get to Irma. Satellite loop, very impressive, very well-defined eye, of course. Here are the Antilles, the islands here, the first islands, land masses really it'll be dealing with as it tracks off to the west-southwest, no, southwest jog of that center at about 14 miles per hour. Still holding at the Cat 2 level at 120 miles per hour gusts to 140. Now let me show you what some of the model plots are with Irma, and notice that they're starting to cluster. Some of the more reliable ones anyway, starting to cluster more with that west-southwest jog, then northwest, and then back due west. Now, a couple of them still try to take it, up to the north. That may be climatology doing that, because that's more of a typical track you would see. Now, the reason for this southwest, then northwest, then west, is because there's a lot going on in our neck of the woods. I mentioned our front coming through with the thunderstorm potential, and then I mentioned the secondary front Wednesday, then the cool, chilly air mass moving our way later this week. So there's a lot of shaking and moving going on in the United States into the North Atlantic. And because of that, there are some differences in timing of some of those features, and each time those get adjusted, they do affect Irma, because Irma is going to try to find a way to go in between high pressure somehow. It's going to try to squeeze its way in. Cold fronts are going to sweep it away and make it turn out to sea usually. But if it misses its ride in this first cold front, it looks like it's going to miss the ride, and therefore it's going to not curve out to sea if that holds true, and therefore it will keep going with the main steering flow to the west. So we're going to see more fluctuations on this, but it is important to see Cuba in the issue here. Now, not that I want Cuba to get hit. The reason I'll point it out is that Cuba is a very mountainous area here. All right, even if it were to impact a little more of Hispaniola in general, it has a tendency to tear apart these hurricanes. So if it can avoid Hispaniola and Cuba in general and try to stay over the open water, the water is certainly warm enough to maintain itself as a major hurricane and certainly a Cat 4, maybe even Cat 5 status. However, if it were to try to get over to more of a mountainous area, yes, it would be devastating for them, but it would certainly lessen the intensity a bit anyway of Irma before we do see a significant front that will try to move in about a week or so from today that will have an impact on Irma and begin to turn it. But when will that happen? Will that happen? Will it go back in the Gulf again and then turn? Or is it going to turn quicker and it to the east side of Florida and the Bahamas? Or is it going to turn right into Florida? That part is the missing part of the equation, and the models are just not going to have a good handle on this, guys, for a few days. Let me show you the reason why there's some differences here. I got the GFS and the Euro wind plots here, and overall an agreement as we head into the 9th of this week, which is going to be coming up this Saturday. They have it in pretty much the same spot on the northern part there of Cuba, and both of them have it generally about a Cat 3, Cat 4 level. That's when we see the differences start to take shape, though. The GFS wants to bring it over Cuba briefly. The Euro wants to begin to turn already, heading toward Miami. Remember, the strongest winds usually on the east-northeast side. Now, this is going to be Sunday. Then, as we head into about a week from today, you can see the Euro is trying to take it more toward the Carolinas. GFS just kind of runs it right along Florida itself. And then they kind of continue that idea, although there is a slight bend back that happens, either due north or bending back, because there is another high that builds in here to the north. Let me show you that. When you look at the 11th, here's the high pressure here to the north. Notice the high is a little more prevalent on the GFS. The Euro, a little more of a deeper area of high here. You got the trough here extending south of that. Therefore, the Euro is going to react in turn quicker versus the GFS is going to try to go a little more inland. The ensembles, fairly similar to the ensembles itself, a bit more on the aggressive side of that trough, sticking out here across, if my pen will work, sorry, across portions, there we go, of the Midwest, and therefore it wants to turn Irma a little quicker than the GFS is showing. Then as we get into the 12th, you see what the GFS does, take it right over us. Euro kind of to the east over the Chesapeake. The ensembles kind of have the same idea and the same story all the way through the 13th. So then it really slows down. So overall theme, guys, we know that the Bahamas and Cuba are certainly at risk here with Irma. After that point, we don't know which side of Florida it's going to go or right over it. And then we got to figure out, is it going to stall and retrograde back inland a bit or not? Because if it does, it may hang out in the Ohio Valley for a few days. And this is a good week to 10 days out, so I can't really say that for sure. I can just tell you what the data is showing. That's something we'll be trending for the earliest alert. But there's your heads up. We'll see how it plays out.